Oh, the other two guys, oh, whatever. The other two guys just decided not to show up for a moment. They're logging in right now. Can you stand? Oh, man, I can't stand it. Right? 7 o'clock is 7 o'clock, right?
That's what I thought. I'm on time all the time. You're always here. It's the Bean and Bash show. We don't need them.
Let this be a lesson for the people at home. If you say that you're going to be somewhere at 7 o'clock, be there 10 minutes before. It's a great thing. It's a nice little tip that you can use there, because then everybody stays happy. You wouldn't do it for the plane, because the plane is not going to wait for you. Then suddenly you can be on time. You see what I mean? But now they can't. So I wanted to give them a little bit of heat. So hopefully it helps for the next time, that they're not going to do it anymore.
So, Bass, how's the production on your breathing machine going?
It's been, we try to do everything ourselves, because we had invested a lot of money, and a lot of money went out, and we were sold out for 11 months. So we try to do all the assembly together, and it's a big one. I don't have a box here, but it consists of 17 pieces, and they need to be in an order in there. So they're like 1 and 1.5, 2, 2.5. You have to really focus. And then, we did 800 last weekend, or 700, I think. And then during the weekend, I prepared a whole bunch of 800 mouthpieces, which is going to take a lot of work away for this upcoming weekend. And then we're going to do another 800. And from that moment on, we're probably going to give it out of hand and let somebody else do it for us, because we already made a good deal, because it's going to be too much.
Awesome. Need to go on Shark Tank.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Shark Tank, we did for a long time. I used to work for Mark Cuban on the Inside MMA, Access TV. Yeah, that I worked for him for 9 years. We did 431 live shows. Look who decided to show up there. Look at this guy.
And he's freaking up. How's your night going, Rick? You're late.
I don't think you can hear us.
I don't think so either. Hey, we got a great guest tonight, though, Bass.
We have a great guest. I fought this guy, so I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a long time ago. Ken and I were always really good. I always liked Ken a lot. And what he did after the UFC and after Pancras and after WWE, and the guy's still fighting. He just loves to fight, and I'm going to ask him to say,
he's still tough as nails.
It's unbelievable. I mean, he's my age, and he's still competing, so that's pretty gnarly.
Hey, you guys, how are you, boss? Hey, Bean.
We're doing great.
Guys, I am having horrible technical challenges on Maui here again. You guys are doing an amazing job as always. Good to see you guys. It's been a whole week, but it feels longer for some reason. And boss, I fought Ken Shamrock once. And Ken probably won't want to admit this, but we were in a gym in Las Vegas, and I used to like to pick guys up on the fireman's carry and do the airplane spin on them, right? Because I'm little and I could do that. So I did that to Ken, and Ken was not happy about it. So he actually, while I had him up, he somehow snaked a choke on me and had me about completely passed out on my feet while he was and I had to put him down. So he won our only fight in about 3.1 seconds, which is a second longer than it should have taken.
But was it before YouTube? Yeah, right? Because there's no YouTube moment now. That would have been great on film.
Yeah, right. I did that to Don Fry at your wedding too. I don't know if you remember that, but that was fun.
Oh, Don brought a bottle of tequila as a present, and then he drank it himself.
That is so perfect. Classic Don Fry.
And then the whole weekend, we had Bruce Buffer. He's announcing. Everybody, Quentin Jackson. It was a crazy party. It was a lot of fun. And then I didn't drink a drop, nothing a drop, until I put my wife in bed. And because she said she had it, I said, okay, you go to bed. It was like 1 o'clock at night. I said, okay, now we're going to start drinking, So that's when we started. But before that, I tried to be the perfect new husband and to not drink.
And I remember that. And you were. I have a photo I've got to send you I found recently from your wedding, just you and I. And my eyes were so glazed, I couldn't believe I could keep them open. And you just look like wide awake and full of energy. So yeah, you stuck with it good that night. That's for sure.
It's once you stop drinking, that's a whole new world opens up. Like 5 o'clock in the morning, you're at the airport, and normally you would walk with a hangover. Now it's like whatever, So yeah, that made a big a big improvement for me. Simply not to drink anymore.
Right. I feel you, man. Shawn Ray, I know, is going to be joining us in a moment. Ken is already backstage, and
nice.
I know we don't want to keep him long, but we should. Let me just ask real quickly, Bean, how are you doing, man? What's going on with you?
Doing good. I just been trying to catch up with everything. I've been going crazy since I went and got the camper, and just going 100 miles an hour, just trying to catch up.
And all that means good, right? Life is good for you. Boss, Bean has been connecting me with the trippiest people lately for Cameo. I don't know how Butterbean knows these guys, but they're like the major reality show stars. And I'm not familiar with because I'm ignorant. But then you look them up, and they're like just massively huge stars. It's like Bean called me last week. He goes, Rick, you ever heard of I thought you said Lizard Lips Cohen. And I'm like, Lizard Lips Cohen. I thought it was like some cheap comedian like on the Bronx circuit or something. And turns out he said Lizard Lick Towing, which is like this massively huge reality show. So we get the guys on. What's that, Bean?
The great show and the great guys. I mean, they're really good guys.
And very good dudes and smart too, man. Super smart. And then you connected me with the Moonshiner guys. 11 seasons these guys have had on Discovery. Who knew, right? Crazy. The Moonshiners.
Moonshine.
Small world.
He knows all the good people.
Why is there not a Boss and Bean reality show? That's what I want to know.
That would be a fun show.
That's a good one right there. I like that.
Yeah. In reality, we okay. Let's come up with something. So that would be something, right?
Hell yeah, man! I like it. You two guys would be gold together on a show. No doubt about it. That would be a lot of fun to see that.
We're going to travel in the RV around America.
There you go.
there you go.
There you go. Stuff ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, good stuff. I just got a message from Shawn. He, like myself, is having some technical difficulties. He'll be back in a moment. Shawn sent me a great photo yesterday of him and Ken Shamrock all like nicely dressed up at this event. So I know, being that you know Ken, Boss, I know you do. Oh, yeah. I guess Shawn knows Ken as well, so that's cool. We'll have a really good level of familiarity today. So with that, and because we don't want to keep the world's most dangerous man waiting any longer than we have to, we could probably all do our own intros because we all know a lot about Ken. I'm super excited to have him on. And I remember back in 1993, I went back to visit Denver, where I had represented football and basketball players previously. And I'm in town, and the Rocky Mountain News, the local paper, has these big full-page ads for this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championships. And I'm like, oh, that looks kind of cool. What is this? So I called Zane Breslov, who is the local WWE promoter, and like, hey man, do you have any involvement with this thing? So I thought maybe he would. And he said, yeah, I'm the local promoter for this new thing. And I said, do you have any extra tickets by chance? And he goes, man, extra tickets. He goes, we can't give these things away, which is amazing where you think about where guys like you and Ken took this sport. So I'm gifted 2 tickets to UFC 1. And this is back in the day when I was wholly uneducated to what real fighting was about. In my mind, a kid growing up in the Valley, I always thought the guys that were like, looked like 6'5" superheroes come to life were the toughest guys in the world. And we all learned that lesson for sure. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I'm watching this show. And the first match is Gerard Gordeau. You know Gerard, of course. And he fights this guy, Tia Tafuli, I think his name was, who had no business being there.
Oh, deep flying.
Oh, God. I think his style was Hawaiian bone breaking or something like that. That's what they called it. Early UFC, right? So then another match comes up, and this guy comes walking out from the dressing room, and I'm like, no, that guy looks like you would expect one of these guys to look like. But the only difference was he not only looked the part, he actually was a world-class fighter. And so that was my first glimpse ever of Ken Shamrock. So I got to see him walk out and do his first fight in the octagon. And it's been amazing to see how he's evolved through the years, not only as a fighter, because, you know, along with a couple others only, boss, like yourself, put the sport on the map. It became, you know, so iconic in the space. And, you know, a major – sorry, Bean?
Now he's promoting bare knuckle fighting.
This guy does – I don't know how this guy does everything he does, because there must be like 10 Ken Shamrock clones running around out there, because the resume
probably,
and the list.
He probably fights on his own show as well, you know, and promoting and fighting.
Very smart. Very, very smart.
And that's really the main thing I wanted to point out, Bean, because as I got to know this guy, who I first viewed as like this comic book superhero come to life, you find out he's a very complex, very deep, very smart guy. And, you know, I didn't get to talk with Ken before we got on here, so I don't know how much Ken knows about our show, if anything at all. But we all know we like to tell stories on this show and have fun, but we go deep and we get into the shit. And Ken has been about as deep into it as anybody I've known, and come out the other side stronger than about anybody I've known. So I look forward to hopefully getting into some of that with
hey, maybe we learn some secrets, Rick.
Let's get him in here.
Hell yeah. So with that, boss, would you like to bring our man on? You did. Thank you.
Boom. There he is. Look at that room in the back. Wow. You got a lot of stuff. Nice.
How you guys
doing, Ken?
Man.
Good, man. Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Very excited. I was just going to tell him, I said the first time when I met Ken was in the dressing room, because we were fighting in September 21st, 1993. And he had to fight the main event, but he was more excited about this cage fighting with no rules they were going to do. He was telling me about, he says they're going to lock the cage, you can do whatever you want to do. And I go, I don't know. That sounds a little scary to me. So, but he was looking forward to that. He was already looking past his fight of the night.
Yeah, and boss goes in there and wins the first tournament. First time he goes in to fight, he wins the tournament. Wasn't too afraid of it.
Dink. We've been lucky, man. How you been doing? What you been doing lately? Ken, you bare knuckle boxing? That's the new thing now, right?
Yeah, it's you know, it's kind of, it's not really new, but I guess it's so old that it's new. You know, I fell in love with it, you know, back when I was fighting in the first UFC, and I got the experience what it was like to actually fight with bare knuckle and no gloves, and understanding of really the purity of striking. Like when you're doing bare knuckle, man, unless it's open hand, boss, you know this. Yep. Unless it's open hand, if you don't hit your target, you're gonna break your hand, because your noggin is harder than your hand. So it really, when I saw that, I was like, man, that's how fights should be, because it forces people to be more of a pure striker rather than a brawl and just swinging punches from everywhere. I just fell in love with it and told myself way back, and if I had an opportunity to actually bring that type of fighting back to educate the world on what it is to be a true striker, I was going to do that.
Wow. And actually, if you think about it, CTE-wise, for brain damage, it's more healthy than boxing with gloves is, because exactly the reason what you said, people can't go full to the head because they break their head. So they have superficial wounds, cuts that they will have, but they keep their brain intact. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. How you doing there, sugar?
My man. That was awesome. Ken, since Shawn just kind of popped on without an intro, maybe Ken, you should introduce Shawn Ray for everybody.
Yeah, here's sweetness right here, guys. And he was the one thing I know about him when he was posing was the way that he went through his posing. He was so smooth, and the shape, his muscles were round, man. He looked really good when he stepped on stage.
Thank you, man. I came out. I was telling boss, I came up right behind you, Ken. When that whole UFC thing was going on, I was training in 1993, 94 at Powerhouse Gym in Huntington Beach. So we're talking Tank Abbott. We're talking the beginning of Tito over at the Powerhouse Gym over in Fountain Valley. and a few other guys. What was the little guy that wound up going to jail? Remember the little Asian guy? I think he killed someone.
Oh, yeah. Joe Son.
Joe Son.
He was there every day. I saw him in the gym training. So this little tiny gym, on Main Street, the tiny gym on Main Street in Huntington was right when kind of UFC was taking off. And this is where Chemo was out there training a lot. And, of course, I knew Dan Freeman. You're up in Northern California, right? Somewhere up in that area?
Yeah, Dan was actually my strength and conditioning coach throughout my career.
Yeah, Dan was competing for, like, the USA titles and all that.
Yeah, he won Junior Mr. USA.
Yeah, so that whole bodybuilding and UFC thing was kind of going hand in hand for a little bit. A lot of the fighters were working out in the gyms. And so it's kind of sucked us in to kind of watch what was happening in the early 90s. And then it just freaking took off and exploded. So I'm a big fan. You already know that.
Well, I appreciate that. Also, too, we have another friend, and I'll set him up here, but I actually bounced with him in Reno, where I'm living now, at a place called the Premier Club. Okay. And on one night that I was bouncing, there was this guy that came in there. His name is Malini. He was probably about 6'4", 260 pounds, played tight end at Brigham Young University, but he was from Reno. Mm-hmm. And he was there club and ended up getting out of control, and I ended up hitting the dude, and I put him in a coma. I shoved his cheekbone up into his brain. And Ramy Berninga actually was working with me that night.
I know Ramy. Yeah.
You're going to be working with him, a week now over in Vegas? He's going to be the head judge, and you're going to be
this weekend. As a matter of fact, I was in Reno. I wish I had known you were in Reno. I was just there for a show that was held over there at one of the hotels, the Atlantis. Yeah, it was held over there. But Remy, he's a bodybuilding promoter. So it all kind of, we all crossed paths at one time or another, right? I was telling the boys here a week or two ago when I was in Vegas, I ran into Chuck Liddell. So it's really cool to kind of see you guys grow old together. But when you're doing business or fighting and all of that stuff, I was heavy into the whole bodybuilding thing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of my success was due to me, because I started when I was 13 and I started lifting. Yeah. And I think a lot of my success that helped me in my fighting was not only just the technical part of it, but I started at 13 years old to really start bodybuilding and training my body to be not only be big, but strong, big, and physically fit. Yeah.
Yeah. When was your last fight? When was your last fight, kid? What year and when was it? Take us back to that last fight, the last time you laced up.
Yeah, I'm 57 now, so I was 52, so that was 5 years ago. Okay. And I fought Hoist Gracie. Unfortunately, the unseen nut shot.
I missed that.
I've taken groin shots before because I wear a Muay Thai cup. Boss knows it's steel cups, and I never feel them, right? But in this case, when he actually hit me in the clinch, when he hit me, it came. And if you ever watch it, it's really low. Like it comes up, under, and then up. So when he hit me with it, it wasn't a straight in knee like you take it, come out like a Muay Thai and throw it in, and you take the front of the cup, and it would sting to be okay. This one here lifted my cup, and when my cup, all my junk got just pinched, and so I tried to hold as I was clinching with him. I'm literally trying to shake it off, but it's like squeezing my nuts. Because when he hit it, the cup slid upwards, and I'm like, and I just finally went to the ground. And I think the thing with that one that kind of upset the most was that they had an opportunity to literally see the replay. Yeah. I mean, the guy on the other side, no question, he didn't see it. I went down, Hoist is hitting me, and I'm looking up at him because Hoist couldn't hit hard. I'm looking up at the guy as he's hitting me going, he hit me in the groin, give me a minute. And so he stops it. And I'm like, okay. The whole time I'm serious, thinking we're going to get a restart. They bring us to the center, grab both of our wrists, and I'm, what are they doing? And then did both of our hands, and I was like, what just happened? And then raised his hand, and I was like, what just happened? Yeah. And so that, I think that last fight, I have this, as you guys can tell, I have this thing that sticks in me, that's something that's never going to go away, that I never got an opportunity to truly fight the guy when everything was even. Because like in the first one, they took my shoes away. I'd never not worn shoes before, so never got a chance to practice without it. it was really hard for me to get my footing in there when I was trying to take him down. And then the next one, they put a time limit in there. I'd been training for a 3-hour fight. I was going with guys every minute. Then 1 minute goes for 30 minutes. And then I would do every 10 minutes and then work for about 3 hours. Just a plan to make sure that I didn't get tired, because the game plan was to wait them out, not make big movements in the guard, because nobody truly understood that guard yet, at least I didn't. So, but I knew by moving too much, I would give him more opportunities. So my game plan was just to smother him, wear him out, put my elbows on his hips, push down on his stomach, and make him move. And I felt like it was the right plan. Unfortunately, I think it was 3 days before the actual fight, they told me that they were going to put a time limit in. And, you train for that. It's hard to try to stop what you've trained to do for that time.
But why was it your last fight, Ken? Why was that your last? Why didn't you come back?
Listen, I think a lot of it had to do with pressure from the outside, not just the outside, but my wife. Listen, I won a lot of fights in my career, but when you lose 7 fights out of 10 fights at the end of your career, you can't make any excuses of why you should keep fighting, other than my love for it. I mean, I could have kept fighting till this day, and the winning and losing doesn't matter to me at this point. It's more about being able to go in and compete and test myself every day to try to be better. To me, that's what I love doing. That's what I would continue to keep doing. But unfortunately, the world won't let me do that.
Yeah, we talked about that, right, Rick? The one fighter that had that, he lost a bunch of fights and then he died. He got killed.
Yeah. But that's to me, that's different than in my case, because when you're talking about a guy that's 0-11 or 1-11 and fighting a guy that's or a guy that's lost won 13 fights, lost 31 fights, and then you put a guy that's 11-0. That's a mismatch. You're going to get a guy hurt because, one, the guy's older. 2, he doesn't have a winning record. So, but someone like myself, who's been in the ring, been against some of the toughest guys in the world, I understand where I'm at. I know where I'm at. And in any of my fights where I've always been able to protect myself. And even in cases where referees stepped in to try to protect myself, unfortunately, the way that the sport has changed, and I'm all for it, because I would rather caution on the side of safe rather than not. So I'm not against anything that any of the referees ever did. I think it was all for my safety. So I've never complained about that. But the world is changing. Guys like Tank Abbott, Oleg Taktarov, guys that you beat up for 30 minutes and then they turn the fight around and win. You're not going to see that anymore because they're going to stop them.
Yeah.
That's true.
Ken, what fight that you lost, that you actually got beat? How'd that affect your mental game? Because I know I've been beat at fights and it messed me up. I mean, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I haven't. I think any of the fights that I've ever had, even when I was a little bit older, I knew what I was capable of doing, but it didn't bother me because I wanted to compete. Sometimes I didn't do the best performance. That's what I don't like. I hate not being able to compete at a high level, but I always challenge and keep pushing myself. I would say the ones that bothered me the most was the ones like Royce Gracie. That's the only one out of all of my career, anybody that I've ever fought, even ones when I lost. Those are the only ones that I felt like I never really got an opportunity to really do what I knew I could have done. Only because there was always, and again, it's not Royce's fault. Royce did what he was supposed to do. He didn't cause this to happen. He was in the ring. He got the win. He did what he needed to do to win. But it was all the other stuff that surrounded outside of there that bothered me, like taking my shoes away. That wasn't Royce's choice. Royce went in and fought what he was supposed to do. They took my shoes away, said, hey, it's a weapon, but his gi's not. Nobody knew the difference back then, but we know now. And then, of course, putting the time limit in there where it was going to benefit him because, the longer that the fight goes, they think he's going to win. But they watched me. They knew I fought a 46-minute fight over in Japan. So they knew my conditioning was good. And so it wasn't even their fault. It wasn't the Gracie's fault at all. It was the actual production that had to come in and say, listen, this is pay-per-view, and we only have a certain amount of time in this block that we're going to be able to put this on, or otherwise the fight's going to shut off. So they had to put blocks in there and time frames in there in order for this to work on pay-per-view. So, so it's anything to do with the Gracies are trying to make this bad, okay? It's just what happened. I'm sure they wanted this fight to go longer before we were fighting. After it was after the fight was playing out, I'm sure they were happy it was a 30-minute time limit. But I just, like I said, a lot of things that just happened in the 3 times that I fought him just felt like I was spinning my wheels and I never got traction.
What about the pay-per-view? What about the money, Ken? I mean, was the money a factor, a part of your career? Because we can see in 2020 vision when it's all over, some opportunities to make money here or make money there. But we also can kind of see the business of the sport a little clearer because we're not competing. That who's making the money and how was it that maybe you didn't get the slice of your pie? When I retired, I was realizing that only the top 10 guys in the Olympia were getting paid. We had 20 some odd guys competing. And I saw how much money was being generated, but I didn't see that it was being divvied up properly amongst the guys that were actually selling it. And I was passionate about that because I thought my name is selling these shows. I should be getting a larger piece of the pie. Unfortunately, it was at the end of my career that I recognized that. What about you? Did you ever feel shortchanged on the financial side?
Well, I'm kind of go through a process here. I remember fighting and people going, especially later in my career, and then I'll get back to the beginning of it, where people, especially the media, would sit down and always ask me, so you doing this for the money? You're a little bit older now. You know, you're not as good as you used to be. So what, are you just doing it for the money? And I just kind of laughed. I was like, don't we all? I mean, like, isn't that why we're all doing it? I mean, like, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm 50 years old or 52 or 49 or 22. It has always been about the money. Yeah, you love what you're doing. You're doing this because you love it. But at the end of the day, you want to get paid. So yes, it's always been about the money. When I first started out, I didn't have an understanding of what the playing field was like, and nobody did. We didn't know what numbers were being brought in. I know in the very early stages, a lot of money was going out on lawsuits. Every city we were going to, they were going to court because somebody would come in that wanted to get their name in for some politician. They started fighting it, trying to shut it down because it was popular. So there was a lot of media coverage. So these politicians would start trying to get in front of the news and want to try to make it safe, even though they didn't even know what it was about. Mm-hmm. And so you started seeing a lot of that happen. And so a lot of the money was being pulled away. So everybody was kind of making what they were making, and there really wasn't a way to negotiate because you didn't know what kind of monies were coming in, but you knew they were struggling. After a while I was there, I ended up going into WWE after, being there for a while and had to make a decision because the money wasn't right. I had walked away from the Bank Station, went into UFC, fought there, did well there. Money was coming in pretty good. Made a good deal with them in my last year with them. They had to come to me after that, tell me that they weren't going to be able to pay me what I was supposed to be making the next year, which is what we negotiated. Mm-hmm. And I had to step away into pro wrestling. Well, I thought that was a good transition for me, even though at the time it felt like the end of the world because I had done pro wrestling earlier in my life, and it wasn't something that fired me up. It was fun. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't funny. And so I remember going into that going, okay, I'm going to do this for a while just to see where it goes and make some money at it. And fortunately, I got to go right to the top with WWF. And so when I went in there, like I do with everything, I want to learn everything I can, from the front office to the ring to training to what other people are doing. I try to make sure my eyes and ears are open so I pay attention on everything going around me to learn everything I can.
Hey, Ken, there's something I always wanted to ask you about your time in WWF. And, I remember back in the day bringing guys like Timo and Tito stage to meet Vince and some of the guys. And there was almost like, there was a real fan worship that time from the WWF wrestlers to the UFC stars. And, now you show up and you for sure were the guy with the biggest rep in the world at that time. What was what was it like the first day you walked backstage and you met these guys and they met you? Can you describe what that vibe was?
Yeah, let me close out what I was just saying.
Sure.
I wanted to bring it to a point of what the pay was like to get there. But what I did was learning from what WWF was doing. I knew what the pay thing because I negotiated all my contracts. I didn't have an agent, so I was doing all this, and I was negotiating for my fighters. And so I was just understanding how it all went, gates and merchandise and all these other things that went on. And then, of course, when I went into the UFC, there was pay-per-view and numbers and different things like that. So I'm trying to put all this together. And then I leave there and I go into WWF. And that was a huge learning experience for me financially.
Yeah.
Because what it did, it showed me what we could do with pay-per-view. Because at that time, nobody was getting points. Nobody was getting anything on the pay-per-view. It was just straight pay. So when I went back to fight with Dana, I basically deal with him because he couldn't pay me what I wanted to fight Tito. And I told him, I said, I'll bet on myself. And he kind of said, what do you mean? I said, I'll take it on the pay-per-view. And he was like, well, we're only doing like 30,000 buys. And I said, I'll do over 100,000. And he basically said, well, I'll pay you anything over 100,000 plus a guarantee. So I had my guarantee, which was decent. And then whatever was over 100,000 buys, I made some pretty good points. And so the first time that anybody had ever brought any kind of numbers into the UFC where you were working and basically betting on yourself what the pay-per-view was going to bring in. And I brought that in. And there was a lot of stuff I was able to learn throughout my career, like you said, was when it comes to the financial thing, because as you get into your career, you have to start looking at yourself like you are a product. You are a person who has to be accounted for financially. And if you get hurt, that product is no more being sold. So you have to make sure you take all these things into account, and you have to bet on yourself. Yeah. And you have to take care of yourself and making sure that you have these things in place. And because there was so much to it, that's when I actually hired my first agent, because I realized the more I focused on my career in fighting, especially in the UFC, because it was dangerous. It was something that you couldn't just do halfway. Yeah. I had to really focus on preparing myself and being in my mindset, being the best fighter in the world, making a name for myself. So I brought in somebody to take care of the financial part of it with what I had already learned and understood. When I first, and to answer your question, when I first came into the WWF, I had actually went down to Canada first and worked with Bret Hart and started trying to understand, even though I had done it when I was younger, this was a whole new beast and a whole different kind of machine that you were dealing with. The in there was great. And here I was coming in there, hadn't been in a wrestling ring in 5 years, 6 years. And now all of a sudden I'm going to jump into this thing. And actually it was 10 years, more like 10 years before I had jumped into a wrestling ring. And so I remember working with him, and first thing he told me was to make sure that I stopped and listened to what he was going to say, because it was going to be very important on me listening to what his words were going to be next. And what he said was, make sure that you don't be a pro wrestler. And I looked at him like, what are you talking about? And basically what he was telling me is, Vince brought you in here because you're the world's most dangerous man. You're a no-holds-barred fighter. You're an MMA fighter. Don't go out there doing hip tosses and sunset flips and work in these programs. You have to go out there. You have to kick, punch, suplex, and submit people. Right. And I remember thinking to myself, shit, that's just like going in and sparring. Like I don't knock him out or hurt him. I just go in and spar with him, and I do. And so really when I went in the locker room, it was, and anybody that's done pro wrestling understands this, they don't trust you. You come from this sport, man, they're looking at you going, I don't want to wrestle this guy. Right. Not because they're afraid of you, but because it's going to be a horrible match. Like this guy's going to be stiff as a board, and the match is going to suck. And I remember having Vader my first match, and it was the best match that they could have given me because Vader was a tough guy. And he basically told me, he said, listen, the worst thing happen here is if you throw a kick or a punch and it doesn't land. He says, make sure everything you do is snug and it lands, because people are watching you. You are the world's most dangerous man. And if it doesn't look good or it doesn't look real, they're going to boo. Yeah. So I laid him in.
And that was your tagline, right? The world's most dangerous man. That's what you were called.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't fake it. It had to be real. In those matches, when you had the match with Vader, is it a one-off? Like you have one match, that's it. You don't fight him again for the rest of the year or the rest of your career, or do you guys take that on the road and continue that?
Yeah, that's a great thing about working with WWF, at least back then, was that we'd fly into Dallas, and then we would do 5 shows that surrounded in the outskirts of Dallas in different cities. We'd stay in a hotel in Dallas. We'd drive 2 hours out to somebody, come back to that hotel, stay there. Next morning, get up, drive to the next state 2 hours away, then drive back to the hotel 2 or 3 hours again. And then the last night, we would do our pay-per-view show or our TV show, which whatever town was the main town. So all those matches that we did around the area, 4 or 5 of those matches around the area, we were working with the same guy that we were going to do the program with on TV or pay-per-view.
Yeah, nice. That's good practice. I didn't know that. I just assumed you had to have more than just one match. It can't just be one thing. So it's well rehearsed.
We were fortunate to be able to do that. That's why a lot of the pay-per-view and the matches were so good, was because we were able to really work a lot of things out when we were doing house shows.
Nice. Okay. Just learn.
Hey, Ken, would Vader and Butterbean have been the greatest tag team of all time, or what?
Yeah, that would have been awesome, man. Because Vader is kind of the same kind of mentality that Butterbean is just a tough son of a gun, man. Just bring it. And Vader was the same way, man. He loved contact. He wasn't afraid of it. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he actually had a couple fights, MMA fights.
Hey, Bean, I told you I went to Switzerland over the weekend. And, of course, my clock was all off. I woke up, it was maybe 3 in the morning, and then I'm wide awake because it's like whatever time it was here. I found myself on YouTube, and I wound up watching your fight with Larry Holmes. I'm thinking about you the whole weekend, watching you and Larry Holmes. I was just thinking of the generational gap. You know, Larry Holmes beat up Muhammad Ali in that the notorious fight way back at the end of Ali's career. And then there you are fighting him for what, 10 rounds? The 10 round, right? Yeah. That was kind of the generation gap between you and Larry Holmes. To see you actually fighting Larry Holmes was really weird, not to mention I'm all the way over in Switzerland watching that.
It hurt me the most. You know what hurt me the most was I was a huge Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. I love those guys.
Yeah.
Then I watched Evander Holyfield get in the ring and actually fight what's his name? He fought the MMA kid.
Vitor Belfort, maybe.
Vitor, yeah.
My heart, man. I was so broken. I was happy for Vitor, but I just it hurt me to see this great icon fall to the canvas.
Evander was the Holyfield against Larry Holmes.
Oh,
I mean, you know, when Evander got beat up by Victor, it looked like Larry Holmes beating up Muhammad Ali. I mean, your heart's, you know.
Yeah.
You got to know when you're watching.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any street fights, Ken, after you were done fighting, your career's over? Did you ever get any street fights?
You know, I'm glad that they didn't have social media like they do now. Because I think me and Boss have been in jail.
On TMZ a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, but since then, man, I haven't. I mean, I was a big drinker. I probably did every drug in the world, orgy, you name it, man. I mean, it was on. It was towards the end of my career because when I first started the Lions Den, it was hardcore. And but towards the end, things started slowing down. I really got caught up in a lot of stuff. I just went hard. Went through a divorce. My kids were, not. They were basically, I was in fighting and trying to fight over in Japan. And I was in a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 fighters, going through a divorce. And then I hear a knock on the door. And then my 3 boys and my little girl were standing there. And I was like, because I would pick them up on the weekends and spend time with them and drop them off and check yourself into a mental hospital. And I tell you, man, that just tore me up. To see how bad things got, right? And so I think around that time I started really turning things around. You know, of course, I'm with my wife now, who I've known since I was 10 years old. She was 10, I was 13, and her parents ran the halfway house at the group home that I was in. But we've been great friends for a long time, and then we ended up starting dating, and it's 25 years now, probably 17 now since, and it's not because I don't drink. I haven't drank for 17 years. It's not like I meant to do it. It's just it didn't never tasted good to me. I did it for what it made me feel like.
But stay there with us, Ken, because that's what we talk about on the show. We talk about some of the things we have to overcome.
Yeah.
Was the drinking a part of the fighting when you were training? Well, because I remember Mike Tyson said half the fights he was on something when he was like, on his days.
I was on something when I fought Oleg Taktarov. I was literally on ecstasy.
Now, how do you get there? How do you get on ecstasy before you get into a fight like that?
Well, that was a one-time thing. I was in Buffalo. We went over to Canada, and I think I know it's fight day.
The party just kind of kept going.
And I trained with Oleg, and so I knew what I could do. I already knew, but it didn't go the way it should have went because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. But it was what it was. But I'd never done that before, even in Japan. I mean, I went out and drank and I partied, but most of the time it was always after the fight. I mean, we didn't mess around when it came to getting in there and fighting and doing our job. Yeah. We were focused, and the team was focused on doing what we were supposed to do. But when it was over, game on. Yeah.
How do you get there, Ken? Think about it. Think about when you started to become a fighter. Think about when you were going for the championship belt. That stuff could have never been a part of your economy, that you would drink, do ecstasy, or do anything that would take you out of your contest prep. How and when did you decide, screw it, I'm going to go ahead and have a little bit. Then it's this, that, and the other. Because on your run up, I know you had to be clean as a whistle and you were hungry as a lion, but somewhere you must have decided, I'll take a little bit. And then people start giving you stuff, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, and I was never clean. I mean, like, I was always like a weekend warrior, but when it came to training, I was always the first one there, the last one. I would train harder than anybody. I worked my ass off, but I would go out and play. But when I played, usually back in them days, it was usually drinking, and that was it. It wasn't until probably later in the career where I started getting more heavy into the other stuff, and it was because my skills were diminishing, and it was just a way for me to cover it up and not look at myself in the mirror and face the fact that I'm not great. Especially with the mentality that I had, I always competed whether I was walking on the street, and if I knew I was fighting somebody, I would try to break them before I got in the ring. And it didn't matter whether it was breaking them or not. And a lot of them say, you can stare me on the line. You ain't me afraid. I'm not going to be going. But it had nothing to do with them. It had to do more with me, preparing myself. Because the more I stare at them, and the more I would look at them, the more I build myself up to be angry, I would fight better. And I hear this all the time when someone says, oh, just get him mad, man. He'll go crazy and he'll mess up. That's not what you wanted to do with me. Yes, later in my career, because I didn't have the skills I had, but that's how I went into every single fight. Was I would stare at somebody, I would get under their skin, and I would build up this anger and this frustration, so that I would go in there and there would be nothing, because my cardio was good. It was really I was strong, and my skill sets were good. I had to work on my striking, but I was working right, better at that. That's why I brought in Maury Smith. But I wanted to be mad. I wanted to not like you. And so I felt like that was my best weapon, other than physical training and preparation. But just before the fight, I had to be able to put myself in a mood where I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Ken, I remember spending a little bit of time with you back in the day, and in line with what you're talking about now. Like, I remember, you probably remember Tom Howard. Tom and I were exchanging stories about you yesterday. And Tom sends his best to you, by the way, because he knew you were going to be on tonight. I remember we were kind of all out a few times, and you seemed like you were in a pretty dark place in those days. And I've always looked at you as a guy who's lived life on both extreme edges, like the toughest of the tough, and then the most successful, and then, back to the other side and back again. And what's interesting to me today, and the last couple of years we've been in touch a little bit, is I've seen this guy who's now in his 50s, who visually is in the best shape I've ever seen you in, who seems like he's come fully out the other side, and it's just like happy now. I wouldn't say the edge is gone. I mean, you'll probably always have somewhat of an edge, which is a good thing. But do you look back on that now and go, I was in a rough place? And how would you compare the you of now to the you of 10 years ago? And how'd you get from there to here?
Yeah, you know, I think the mistake a lot of people make is looking backwards and trying to figure out why things happen the way they happen, because we can't change that. Like, I mean, that's just stuff that has happened. What we can do though is look back and look at the things that helped us get past where we were at, like the rough times that you go through, and the discipline that helped you get back to where you are now. I think the education, the learning, and the steps that you had gone through is valuable because you pass it on to other people. Being able to help other people not make those same mistakes. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, man, when you have these young kids growing up in the world today, the way they're growing up with so much focus on them, some of the things that we have gone through and that we've learned along the way would go a long way to keep them out of trouble. Even though there's a focus on the social media and stuff like that, man, there's just so many things that we can teach these guys. And that's one of the things I do. I do testimonies. I travel around and tell my story. And I also do motivational speaking. And a lot of that stuff is basically passing on things that I learned from my father, things that helped me get to be from being in a group home, a punk kid on his way to California Youth Authority with no future. And then turn out to where I was a world champion in the world of fighting, being able to carry on and some of the ups and the downs that I went through. And then the biggest thing is being able to share the downs after I became famous, and things that the pitfalls I fell into, thinking that's not, I could do this. It's not going to hurt me. And next thing you know, 4 days later, you're laid up in a crack house and on the couch with 3 girls laying around you. And, you know, your kids are calling saying, where's dad? You know, all these things that people just think can't affect them. Like, it's because I go out and hang out with my buddies and I want to go over here and party for a weekend, and then I'll stop and I'll go home. Next thing you know, you're doing it every weekend. Then you start doing it on Thursdays. You start moving it back on to Thursdays, and then you start doing Wednesdays. Pretty soon, it's one day after another day because you're hanging around the wrong people. And so you just get engulfed into this circle of these individuals that you're not hanging out with or normally not used to being around. And all of a sudden, there they are, and you take it out.
It sounds like that's kind of what it reminds me of the Mike Tyson story.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by a bunch of strangers that are facilitating your downfall.
Right.
But Mike, Ken, was that the reason you kept on fighting, to keep yourself kind of in line? Like I did my last fight, I after 7 years, I was drinking so heavy and they offered me a fight, and I look at my wife and said, I'm going to take it. He goes, why? I said, because it's going to force me to stop drinking, you know, because otherwise I can't do it. And I always thought with you, because that was in your rocky period, maybe that was the reason you kept on fighting.
Absolutely, because what it does is it brings you back to your mindset of feeling good, like you're important now, because now you're back in training, you got your training partners around you. Now all of a sudden you feel important again. You feel real again. But the hard part with that is I was such a good athlete and I did a lot of things good and I put the work in. I mean, I worked my ass off and worked out really hard, along with great, skills, just natural skills, gifted skills, God-given talent. And so once you start doing that, you start slacking off a little bit, and all of a sudden you're basically going in doing fights with basically just your talent. And then it may not bother you for a year, 2, 3, 4 years, but pretty soon now you've built up all these bad habits because you're in there training like you used to train, and you're basically winning fights off of just regular God-given talent. And then when you start losing, you go, well, why am I losing? And you try to go back in and train, and you don't have those same habits anymore. And you don't have the same people around you. You have the same ones that caused you to keep going in that direction of losing fights. Right. Then when you try to rebuild that structure again, it's not there anymore. And but it doesn't stop you from wanting to fight, right? You keep going, fighter. I've overcome anything in my life, so I know I overcome this. So you just keep doing it until you figure out a way to overcome it, or you're just saying, okay, it's time to stop.
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's a real look at what probably happens to a lot of fighters, I imagine.
Yeah. And now, like I said, I've if somebody was to offer me a fight, in my mind, my immediate response would be, hell yes.
Yeah.
But after I sit and think about it, and I roll it through my head, and my wife in the background is going, "You ain't taking that fight. You can fight nobody else." I mean, you start putting them together, and you start going. That's not a good decision, right?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you're never gonna take that out of me. You're never gonna take that out of me. Somebody jumps in my face, I could be in a wheelchair. If somebody gets in my face, I'm gonna fight them.
Yeah.
That's just me. That's never going to change.
I'm fortunate to not ever like be a fighter like you guys, but you know, people are always trying to tempt me to get back to where I once was physically. But I know the process along the way of trying to get back to where I once was. I would injure myself. I would hurt something would tear, something would pop because I would get into that mindset, and I realized that I'm actually in my 50s, right? As a fighter, I imagine you probably always feel like you're still the baddest man on the planet, but you're just going to move a little bit slower. You're not going to be able to.
After the first day of training, you tell yourself, and you start going, "Why did I do this?"
Yes,
everybody, you start going, 1 minute goes, and everybody's whipping your ass, and you're going, "This ain't fun."
But guys, Shawn and Ken, so much more mature to be able to have that view on things now. Ken, we're getting a ton of comments on what we were talking about a couple of moments ago, like you out doing motivational speaking and testifying. And when you do that, obviously you have an hour, 2 hours, whatever period of time you have. There's a lot of people that what you're saying is really resonating with them. So a lot of our people making comments, they seem to be facing a lot of the same challenges that you faced. And what can you say to somebody? This is putting you on the spot, so I apologize. But what can you say to somebody like on a podcast when there's a couple of minutes left? What can they do to turn their challenges around? They don't have the gifts and the fame that you and Bean and Shawn and Boss have. You know, they're like myself, an average person facing tough times. What can they do to start turning stuff around?
Well, it's a tough one to answer when you don't they're going through or what kind of situation they're in. And they have a support system. They don't have a support system. They got a mother and father still, a grandfather. I don't know what the dynamic is, but I will say this, that no matter what situation you're in, first of all, it starts with you. Like nobody is going to do anything for you because they can't. I remember being in the hospital after I broke my neck my senior year. I had scholarship. I was in a group home. I was on my way to California Youth Authority. Bob Shamrock picks me up, puts me in a group home, and starts counseling me. I get my freshman year. I play football. I wrestle. My senior year, I'm undefeated in wrestling. I'm on my way to state. Everything I did everything right as a kid that was in trouble, moving in the right direction. I go into practice and I break my neck on a stupid move where I got into a fireman's carry. Guy went to flip me, and I went to put my hand out. I stuck my head in the mat. Boom, broke my neck. Laying there, they picked me up, put me in the hospital, drove me away, put me in a hospital. And I remember laying in the hospital, and doctor tells us that I'm never going to play contact sports again. Sports is over. You know, we're going to have to do surgery. We're going to take a bone chip out of your hip, fuse it in your neck. And you're done. No more contact sports. So whatever it is that you were planning on doing, because I had scholarships, that you're not going to be doing that. And I remember thinking to myself, I got depressed, bad depression. Like my life's over. Like this is all I am. This is why I became important. Why people were helping with schoolwork, and because I was good at football or I was good at something. And I remember my dad said this to me, and it stuck with me through my whole career, through my whole life, even through my ups and downs. When I was depressed and going through some hard times, I remember listening to these words, and he said, are you going to lay there and pout about it? Or are you going to do something about it? He says, because nobody, and I absolutely mean nobody, can do anything for you but you. He says, in this moment, you got to decide whether or not you're going to do something about this, because nobody else can do it for you. And I remember thinking to myself, not the way that he was saying it. He was basically telling me, look for something else to do, be a counselor, work with kids. In my head, when he said it to me, and I was like, he's right. Like, this doctor doesn't know me. He has absolutely no idea who I am. He doesn't know what I'm willing to do to get to where it is I want to go. Like, this guy's telling me I can't do this anymore. Like, he can't tell me that. And I remember I took that to heart, got out of the hospital, started training. 2.5 years later, after I broke my neck and had a fusion, not like somebody who fractures their neck and goes on and does something big, and then they find out and tell everybody that they got a broken neck. I have pictures where I had a halo on. I had bolts in my head, a chest plate on. I broke my neck where they had to take a bone chip out of my hip, cut my neck open, and fuse that bone in my neck so it wouldn't fall off, like be paralyzed.
Yeah.
So I doing that all the way through my career. I stuck with me because I felt like if anybody ever has the opportunity to change their lives, and it doesn't matter what you go through, you are the only one that is going to do that. You have to put the work in. Yeah, people can lead you, introduce you, give you opportunities, but you got to do the work.
Amen.
Yeah,
Dean,
reminds
what
me
did you-
of Ken Shamrock that broke his neck and come back. You two are. I thought they broke the mold with Vinny, but I mean, you two are made from the same mold for sure.
Yeah, I mean, being a wrestler like Ken was, it's got to be even. I mean, every time you go in there, that neck is involved in it, the way that Vinny's was as a boxer, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's funny too, because when you're actually in the moment, and all of us know this as athletes, when you're in the moment, none of that stuff enters your mind. Like, you don't even think about it. Like, you got a goal or something that you got to get done, and you're so focused on getting it done that none of that stuff ever enters into your mind until afterwards.
yeah, that's what makes you great, man. That's incredible. It's a huge story.
Freaking awesome.
You got any injuries now, Ken? I mean, you look like you're ready for a bodybuilding show.
Yeah,
I
you're
know.
freaking giant.
Yeah, just I've always enjoyed bodybuilding. It's one of my first loves. I did a few shows, actually. Won one show, and so I've always been in love with it. And even as today, like we talked about with motivation, the last thing I want is be in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I mean, being so. Something happens to you and it just like it sucks, man. And I felt like if I was going to put myself in a position to be able to be healthy when I'm 80 years old, then with a broken neck twice, I broke it twice. And then being able to have a metal ball in my shoulder, a knee replacement, broke my lower back where I got metal in 1 through 3 in my lower brackets in my lower back. I felt like fitness was a big part of me being able to enjoy life after fighting. And so I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make sure that I stayed fit, in good shape, as long as I can possibly do it. And it'll be a time where I'll get to a point to where, I'll be 70 or 80 years old and I just won't be able to do it.
That's not that old. That's around the corner, man. That's not that old. Right? 80 years.
70, 80. Look at his numbers that were thrown at.
80, 85. That's old. 70's not that old.
Yes. I'll do it.
We're talking about those injuries, and we talked earlier on some other shows. With those injuries, did you dabble in those painkillers that people get hooked on, like Oxycontins and the morphine or what? Was that part of your routine?
Oh, yeah. I think every fighter, once they experience it, it's hard to stop.
Yeah.
It's a lie because I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Dope Stick. It's actually a movie about it's got Keith Sutherland, not Keith Sutherland, but I forget his name, but
Michael Keaton. I'm actually watching that on Hulu right now.
Yes, yes. And it really tells you about how the government and the pharma fought with one another of trying to regulate it, because it was getting to be a point to where they were just handing them out like candy. They literally were saying breakthrough pain. Like there's no such thing as breakthrough pain, right? They came up with the terminology breakthrough pain so they could give you more. And they say if you're feeling pain, just means you need to up the dose. So they went from 10 milligrams to 20 milligrams to 80 milligrams to 160 milligrams.
That's logical, right?
Wow.
You're paying for it and you're hooked.
Yeah, and it's because when I started taking it, I actually got it from my wife because she had back pain, she had back surgery, and so she was taking, I'm not sure what it was, but she had
probably the prescribed dose, right?
Just say when I took it, I felt like another person. I'd go to the gym and I was training. I was like, wow. So the next thing I was popping these things probably when I was 46. And I started popping these things. And before I knew it, I remember driving down the freeway because I had this event I was going through. And I was driving there from Reno to Sacramento. And I remember driving through there. And all of a sudden, my body just started sweating. And I started shaking. And I'm like, what's happening? I mean, I didn't know. And I remember calling my wife. And I said, honey, I think I'm sick, man. Something's wrong with me. And she's like, what's happening? And I told her, you're going through withdrawals. I was like, what? She goes, you're going through withdrawals. And I'm like, what do you mean withdrawals? I'm not taking anything. And it was literally because I took it for almost 6 months, right, to go work out. And then all of a sudden I just stopped. I felt like, okay, I feel good now. I'm going to stop. I had no idea what the side effects were.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm driving down and this hit me. And I was like, and then I had to start taking them just so I didn't go through withdrawals.
Wow.
Well, then I had to go through a program to be able to teach me how to be able to do that stuff. And I thought to myself, how many people have been tricked into the same situation I was tricked in? How many? 60-year-old women, 80-year-old women,
Yeah.
right? And you're just like, you didn't want to do that. You just felt like, oh, they're telling me it's okay. Doctor's giving it to me. It's got to be okay. But then they don't tell you about all this other stuff that you're going to have to do when you want to stop.
Yeah, kind of sounds like what happened with Michael Jackson. It started as a sleeping disorder, and the next thing you know, he's on it all the time. And you hire your own doctor, and he took him out.
Yeah,
That's
a mistake to hire a doctor.
Yeah, right. If your best friend is your doctor, you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, you before we let you go, I mean, we get welcome to stay on. You've been amazing. You've mentioned your wife a few times. So I wanted to give a quick shout out. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to say hi to Tanya from all of us. And Bean, I don't know if you've met Mrs. Shamrock before or not, but she's very much like the Libby of the MMA world. Ken, I don't know if you know Bean's wife, Libby, but just like salt of the earth and cool. So
I met her. She was with him. Yeah. She was with him at a signing. I met her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I got one little quick story to tell about my bidet. Y'all got to hear that.
Oh, he got his bidet, Ken.
I just got a bidet like a week ago.
My butt cheeks just crinkled up.
I know.
So my 3-year-old granddaughter is still in the toilet with my wife. She goes, "What is this?" So she tells her what it's for. So when her mom comes in, she hollers at her mom, "Come in, Mom! Come here! Look! You see that? That's what Pop wipes his butt with."
Yes.
I just got this, boys. Just out of it. You know what this is? It's actually a magazine. I know you guys remember what these were, right?
Yes.
It's been a while. They've gone the way of the 8-track, but I managed to squeeze myself into the magazine one more time. So there it is.
Man.
Nice.
You're a beast.
20 years into retirement, it's still going on.
You're a beast, brother. Yeah.
So what do you got going on now? Like, where can people see you? I know you say you do motivational speaking, but is there a routine that you got set up? Is there a website you have or a social media that people can kind of follow and see what you're doing?
Or you burn out the site. What's going on?
I got 2 websites. One of them is valorbk.com, which is the bare knuckle league we're doing. I know that we've got some opportunities to do some stuff with some people over in England. We're looking to do some promotions between U.S. and Canada, or U.S. and England, having fights with U.S. fighters and England fighters to put on a show.
As a promoter, you're promoting?
So we're looking at maybe something like that down the road. But if you want to check it out and kind of see what we're doing, it would be valorbk.com. My website is kenshamrock.com. Go on there. It's got all my social media platforms on there and all the upcoming events that we have going on with different motivational speaking or signings. I know next week or 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Vegas doing a signing down there. So, so I got, like I said, I try to stay busy. I think that itself for me, staying fit, staying busy, and just making myself relevant, because I just, when you live a lifestyle like most of us has lived, where you're promoting fights or you're fighting, it's an exciting life, man, and it's fast and it's fun and exciting, but it slows down, and I'm not ready to slow down. So,
that is awesome. Ken, it's so good to see you looking so good and doing so well. It's heartwarming, man. It sounds a little corny, but it is. When are you going to be in Vegas? What are your dates for Vegas? Are you getting to LA at all?
Yeah, I'm going to be in LA, I believe. I've got my uncle passed away, so we're supposed to go to a funeral. The November 8th through the 11th, I'll be in Southern Cal, LA area. And then on the 13th to the 14th, I'll be in Vegas doing a signing.
Hey, Ken, I got one last question for you, Ken. Is there someone you wanted to fight that you didn't get the opportunity to go heads up with? Was there that one guy that you wanted, but you didn't get around to it?
Well, I get asked that question all the time, and I give it the same answer. It's not somebody that I didn't fight. It's when I fought them. And it would be Tito Ortiz. I felt like I fought him when I was 46, I believe, something like that. And I respect the guy. He's a great fighter. I just wished it's that thing you have in your mind. I wished I would have been able to fight him when I was younger, because I believe we would have put on a hell of a fight. We'd have tore the house down. I think that would have been just a great fight because of the way he fought, the way I fought. I thought we would have just put a hell of a fight on. So
that fight happened too late for you. You wanted it earlier. That would have made Tito younger. I mean,
being around the same age prime, being able to fight one another with the same skill sets, not one being more than the other.
Oh yeah, right.
And be able to because Boss knows this very well. If I'd have just had more experience, if I'd have just had a little more time, and it's just something that you just wish. You're happy for them, right? I mean, you're happy for them, and I respect Tito, and I like him, and I'm happy for him. But in your heart, you just go, man, I would have given him a better fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's been amazing having you on today, Ken. Thank you so much for taking your time. And boss, do you want to you want to do the outro for our good friend Ken?
Well, the good friend Ken, he put my career in a rocket move upwards, because he made me lose. I lost twice to him. And the last time I lost to him, I got really fed up with myself, and I told myself, okay, I'm going to have to learn this game. And that's when I flipped everything. I said, okay, I'm going to do striking. The only thing I'm going to do is 2 times a week, pipettes, or 3 times, and the rest is only ground. And it inspired me so much. And then I saw all the combinations and everything that you could do with ground fighting. And suddenly I won my next 8 fights by submission. And that's when I never lost again. And it all is to that big man right there who set me on the course. He made me lose in a bad way.
Wait, boss, where were those 2 fights held? They were in different venues. And how far apart were they?
They were not that far apart. I think a year and a half or something, right? Apart, I think. Not that crazy.
We fought about almost 4 months from each fight.
But where were they? Where were they at? Where were they held?
Japan.
Both of them.
Japan. Yeah, they were both in Japan. Yeah. So
That was not UFC fighting, though, right? That wasn't UFC.
No.
What was it?
No.
That was Pancras, where we actually started at. That was Boss came in the very first Pancras event. I was the main event of the very first Pancras event. Boss when he fought, who was it you fought your first fight?
Yeah, Aji Yanagisawa.
Great kid. And Boss I mean, everybody after that, Boss was a superstar. I mean, when he hit this kid, man, he shoved his face up into his brain. I mean, it was brutal, and nobody knew it because it was the very first time that anybody ever actually saw a pro wrestling match that was real. That's basically what this was. They were selling hybrid pro wrestling, and they said, now it's going to be real. And so when Boss came in and hit him with that open hand strike, man, it was everybody. And that point on, he put everybody on notice.
So that fighting is not UFC fighting.
No, but it was real. It was real.
Yeah, and a lot of guys from that organization, because it had certain rules that made it more interesting. I truly believe they should bring it back, actually. But what happened is that, I think we had like from Pancras, maybe like 6 or 7 UFC champions came from there. Yes. And it was a small organization. So these guys were fighting. We fought the first year. I fought 9 fights, and the second year 8 fights. I mean, we were fighting almost every month. So we just kept on fighting. If we're not injured, might as well compete, So we learned a lot in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I fought 3 times in 1 month.
Were you there, Ken, when those fights they had no time limits? When you started? Were you part of that?
30 minutes.
Yep. I fought 46 minutes in Japan and then 36 minutes in the UFC.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And in Japan, when we arrived there, that's when I found out it was only 1 round. And I was very happy to hear 1 round, but then they told me it was 30 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Good time.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
Hey, Ken, do you keep in touch with any of the guys? I know you're in Reno and you have these autograph sessions, but are there any of the guys that you keep in touch with? Like, as a bodybuilder, I'm still traveling around. I run into guys. And that's when we can maybe catch a bite to eat or have some conversation. But is there any main guys that you kind of have stayed close to throughout the industry?
It's weird because I don't know if it's me or it's got to be me. But it seems like I get so caught up into what I'm doing. Like, I went to pro wrestling and I focused on that, and I don't do a whole lot of other stuff outside of what I'm doing at the moment. I mean, my family, or, I'm doing what I'm doing for my career. I see people when I travel. Like, I just saw Trey and Guy, those guys up there about 3 months ago when I was going through Dallas. I see a bunch of people when I'm traveling and going other places. But it's not like I pick up the phone and call and talk to people. And I think in some cases I might hurt people's feelings. It's not on purpose. I don't know. I hate phones, and I'm not a talker when it comes to like dialing and talking to people. I'm just not one of those people. And I think that maybe sometimes I think people who I was close to for a while when I was going through all that training might have taken offense to it because I don't contact them or call them, or they may call me and I miss their call. Though, like I said, it's not like I do it on purpose. I don't know, man. I'm my best wife. The person I go out with is my wife. People I hang out with and I go and do things with are my kid, my wife, my family, my father-in-law, mother-in-law, my mom in Modesto. When I travel, when I do something, it's usually in that form. And prior to that, I was out with the boys and I was out doing other things. But my life I focused on changing my life to where I'm focused on my kids because I missed a lot of that, being a fighter and traveling a lot, and spending time with my wife and my family. So that's when I get a free time. That's what I do.
What about acting? No acting? I know Boss did a little bit of acting. Hollywood hasn't called you?
Can't stand it.
No.
Can't stand it. It's much sitting around. Like, we'll sit and shoot this thing like 100 different ways. It's like, dude, we already twice. Well, we got to get his face. We got to get your reaction.
Right.
We set the lights. And I was like, okay, I'm done.
Not for everybody. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, man, thanks so much, and keep doing what you do, man. Inspiring, like you did with Boss Wooden. Keep making people better, man. It's so good to see you.
Hey, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate that, Boss.
For sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Boss. But I think that Boss is one of those kind of people. When you look at him, you could already tell he was a superstar, and that he had a lot to learn, and that he was going to do it. I mean, he was disciplined. He was disciplined. Fun, don't get me wrong, but you could tell every single time he came back and fought, he was getting better.
Yeah. Well, listening to both of you guys talk, I mean, you guys are both educators. You guys are both teachers. Like, you guys would probably be great coaches. I'm sure you've helped some people along the way. But with your experience that you have and being on the high side and on the dark side and coming back out on the bright side, it sounds like you guys have a lot to offer for guys that are coming up behind you, that you can save them a lot of heartache and some trouble with your experiences. So keep on teaching, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Right on,
Butter, pleasure always, my friend. Good seeing you, brother. Yep. And Rick, good seeing you again too, brother.
Hey, Bean, take a picture of your bidet and send it to Ken so we can see what you're working with.
Hey, make sure you say hello to Rainey for me, will you?
Oh, I will. I'll do that.
And also ask him about that fight, because that was weird. Like, it was a short night, and this dude come in there, and I hit him.
Yeah.
Dude, Nicole, his football career.
Yeah. I'll talk. I'll see you this week. I'll talk to him.
Yeah.
Thank for coming on, Ken.
Hey,
Appreciate
Thank you, brother.
Ken.
Very good to see you.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Have a great evening.
Great guy. Great guy. I mean, I'm actually surprised that he's so present and so aware, knowing what I know about his past, right? I mean, what I knew from a long time ago, to see him so clear and stable right now, it's a good thing. That was a feel-good conversation.
Yeah, Shawn, it's like we talk about a lot about people coming out the other side. I mean, this guy truly did that. I mean, it's pretty amazing transformation.
Yeah, he did it a couple of times, I think. Coming out to the other side, and going back and going back and going back. I mean, the story that he says, and then the next thing you know, you're doing crack with 3 naked girls in the room. And I go, whoa. I mean, I'm crazy, but not that crazy, you know? And your kids are calling.
Takes some of us more than once, huh, boss? Yeah.
Huh?
It takes some of us more than once, doesn't it?
It is, unfortunately, this for us, but we're hard-headed. But, you know, the thing is, once we have it in there, it will never happen again. Like a pain pill, there's no freaking way I will ever take a pain pill again. You see those things, drunk? I haven't been drunk for a long time because I don't like the feeling anymore, because I feel like I lose control. I don't want to do it. If I take 2 drinks, I'm already thinking, why did I drink the second drink? You see, I'm not drunk anything. So
I think it's 17 years, I think it's been for Ken, so that's good.
Yeah, he's really amazing, man. And the way his arm was
he's
trying.
A little bit envious, actually.
Yeah, Shawn, you're hiding the guns today, man. What's going on there?
I went to PF Chang's, man. I fell off the wagon. Hey, I'm really jealous that you guys had that conversation with Mick Foley. I got to watch that from Switzerland over there, and what a great guy Mick Foley is, man.
Yeah.
So,
guy. Sam was nice.
We have a guest next week. I'm sorry, boss. Go right ahead, please, sir.
No, I was just thinking, Sam Greco was awesome also. You know, I had a really good time with him to hear that story with the heart and, you know, and how scary that is, and that nothing that you believe is important now, none of that shit will go through your head at the moment your life is on the line. You know, it's all about love and, I forgot to say I love you to him and her. And that's cool to know, because that's what it really is. That's why people are focusing too much right now on wanting things that don't do anything. You can't bring them with you. You know, your legacy, work on that. That's what I say. Be a good person. 1,000 years from now, do it. That was a really good guy. And then if they say at the end, you know what? And he was actually a pretty decent fighter as well. That's it for me. But the first thing should be you're just a simple, regular, good, decent person. That's what everybody should shoot at.
100%, man. And I think that's why the thing with Sam works so well, because he's exactly that. And something else I'm noticing, I don't know if you guys see it this way, but I think probably jumping off with Sam's show, this group is like really starting to gel now. It took a minute, but I'm like sitting back, boss, watching you and Bean and Shawn, and I'm like, damn, these guys are really good. I mean, I already knew that, but it's like it's just really gelling now. And I think with the group, we're able to bring the best out of guys who are already great guys, and it's been.
And you know, I think it's also age appropriate, because we've kind of all been there. I mean, we're not bottom feeders, so to speak. We've seen what it looks like from the top, and in hearing some of the things, the challenges that the normal people don't see, they don't get to hear. Because I mean, where are we going to be telling these stories except for this conversation on this podcast? We're not going on national television and having the time to get this involved conversationally with some of the ups and downs of our careers. So that's why I really like the Talking Tough format, because these guys, they're volunteering to open up and show their heart, and then also be mindful of the other people that are in their lives that matter. I mean, look at Bean's got his bidet. He's as happy as he can be. Who would have thought that a bidet would put a smile on his face like that? You know what I mean? I mean, who's talking about a bidet? Now we know that Bean is a happy man today.
I'm happy because he's happy.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for the lead on that, Shawn. That actually brings us to the most important part of the hour. Bean, how's a bidet, man?
It's awesome.
Look at him. That looks like when you won the championship belt.
It's awesome.
That's
My
good.
granddaughter, Mommy, you got to come see this. That's what Papa washes his butt with.
I don't think we're going to want to see a show and tell on this thing, but if it's making you that happy, I'm sure at some point you're going to have to gift that to one of your co-hosts to share the love.
You know, Shawn.
Water and just different angles. It's just hard to find a good one.
Bean, it just struck me, Shawn. You probably know this by now. Bean is like a marketing and merchandising machine, and he's becoming that. I mean, how far off can Butterbean bidets be, really?
Yeah, they're out there. We saw the Foreman girl, so I mean, the Butterbean bidet has got to be right behind there somewhere. No pun
The
intended.
BBB, the triple B.
That's fantastic.
Butterbean bidet.
We'll get that going for you,
Hey,
B.
brought by boss at the very end, you know? Brought by boss.
Yeah, that's a lot of B's, bro.
Nice. So, guys, our guest next week, for a first timer, I don't think any of you got, for the first time, I don't think any of you guys know him. His name is Marcus Timmons, and he goes by the name of Big Herc, Herc. And he's an old friend and a good friend who looks like a monster. He's one of those guys that the average person is going to cross the street when they see coming. And this guy did 8 years hard fed time. Before that, he was a porn star of all things. Then he did his 8 years hard fed time. And this guy is probably the single most positive and evolved human being I've ever met. That's a big story. That's a big statement. I know that. He has a platform called Fresh Out on YouTube. He's got over 500,000 subscribers to it. His following is off the charts, and it's telling people stories from prison, but not just telling the stories, getting to the mentality behind it. The same way we do. Tell stories, but then get into the depth behind it. So I'm really excited for you guys to meet Marcus. I think it's going to be super cool. You're all gonna vibe. And as an added bonus, he's bald, so perfect.
Nice.
That's amazing.
Bring him on.
I gotta run,
Guys. Good to see you.
Whoosh.
All right. Take care.
All right.
All right. Peace out, everybody.